Well, I'd like to start by getting you to think back over your career. And I want you to think about a time, maybe it was your last 15 meeting-free minutes of your day that's just been taken up with an invite that says, quick chat. Or maybe it was an especially chaotic meeting, and just as everything's reaching fever pitch, someone bursts in through the door to tell you that the room's been double booked. But I just want you to think back to a time that you can remember looking around and thinking to yourself, this place is a circus. Well, I have too, only in my case, it wasn't a metaphor. I used to think this every single day because a long time before I'd ever used the words flight to quality in the same sentence, I worked in a literal circus. Now, this is a very short presentation and there's no Q&A, so I'll save you the trouble. Trapeze, yes. Animals, hard no. And clowns, surprisingly complex and nuanced art form, and you'll have to ask me another time. But look, back then, you learn quickly that you don't put someone 10 meters in the air and hope that they concentrate. We know that if we want people to perform at their best, you've got to engineer the environment so that attention can survive. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. Because while the threats in our modern offices aren't necessarily death-defying, I think we can all admit they can still be kind of terrifying. And while we're tracking carbon, energy, and square meter efficiency down to a T, we're really asking a more basic question, which is, how well does this space protect our ability to think? Well, it's definitely no secret that we've got leaders everywhere still wrestling with return to office mandates. And we've redesigned spaces, we've added amenities, and we've offered every free lunch you can throw a miso salmon poke bowl at. But lots of people still aren't coming in. And they're resisting because the office doesn't feel productive. And here's the kicker. They're right. If we look at the data, we know that the average knowledge worker gets interrupted 275 times a day on average. And on top of that, it takes us 23 minutes to fully refocus after we get distracted. So it's probably no surprise that only 12% of people say they can do their best thinking in the office. Now, that's not a vibe issue. That's a measurable failure of design. But there's some good news. The result, what does that leave us with? Well, it's frustrated teams, wasted space, and quiet quitting that begins with quiet underperformance. But there is some good news. We were getting to that. We can fix this. But it's not with another ping pong table. And it's not with nicer amenities. The answer is designing spaces that are actually thinkable. And this is the case for cognitive sustainability. It's a shift from environments that drain attention to ones that protect it. Because attention isn't infinite. It fractures, it fatigues, and it walks out the door when people aren't set up for success. And this is where neuro-inclusive design principles can offer us a smarter lens. Kay Sargent, who's one of the leading voices in this space, reminds us that neurodiversity is not a niche issue. It's a spectrum. And when we design for the extremes of that spectrum, everyone benefits. Or, in other words, designing for the most sensitive brains elevates the experience for all brains. Think about it. Noise, light glare, temperature swings, they're not just bothering neurodivergent folk, they're silently sabotaging productivity for everyone. And some people just feel that more acutely. And these people are like our canaries in the coal mine. And when they retreat, disengage, or avoid the office entirely, that's a signal. So what can we do differently? Well, across the industry, we're starting to see things like zoning for choice. These are spaces built like cognitive climates, like focus zones, reset zones, and social zones. They're like controllable thermostats, but for your brain. And then we've got things like sensory predictability. And this is using lighting, acoustics, and visual cues to reduce mental load rather than increase it. And we've also got micro-refuge spaces. Now, these are quiet, tucked-away nooks where people can go to mentally decompress during the day. And no, they're not nap pods, but they're just places to go and catch your breath. So I'll share a quick story with you. I recently visited a client after we'd installed a number of acoustic pods in their office. And during this meeting, my client said something to me that I'll never forget. She said, this was the first time in her career where she'd been given space to think, not just take calls and meetings, but to actually pause and reset during the day. And then she got a little bit emotional, and she said to me that for years, she thought something was wrong with her. And she thought that not being able to focus in the office meant that she wasn't as sharp as her colleagues. And she kind of just accepted that, well, this was probably as far in her career as she was ever going to climb. And it wasn't until this refit, this seemingly small change, where she realized it wasn't her. It was a space. And then a couple of weeks ago, she emailed me, and she introduced me to one of her colleagues and said, he's going to be the best point of contact moving forward because she's moving up into a new role next month. Well, you better believe that I am going to be the first person to comment a truly obnoxious amount of party, confetti, and fire emojis on her LinkedIn post when she announces that. But look, this stuff matters. It's not soft, and it's not just nice to have. It's the difference between feeling capable and feeling broken. So here's the new lens I want to share, and it's the attention footprint. So if the carbon footprint asks how much energy does this space use, the attention footprint asks how much cognitive energy does this space use? How many distractions does it invite? And how many, does it invite distractions, or is there space to reset, or mostly just to meet? And when we start thinking this way, the benefits ripple out. Spaces start to serve people again, and not the other way around. We start to see better use of space, more effective meetings, less burnout, and most importantly, spaces that serve people. So I'm going to wrap this up because this is a short talk, and the irony of standing up here talking to you about paying attention when we're, 7.5 hours into an 8-hour day is definitely not lost on me, but I'll leave you with an image. So if you take an acorn and you give it soil, water, sunlight, it'll turn into what it was always meant to be, an oak tree. Strong, steady, expansive. And over time, that oak tree will give back. It enriches the soil, provides shade, clears the air. But if you take that same acorn and you put it in the back of your desk drawer, it'll never change. It doesn't matter how much potential it had. And that's what excites me about the work that we're all doing here. Every person in this room has the power to be the sunlight and the water that turns potential into performance. And wouldn't it be cool if one day we could look around our spaces and instead of thinking this place is a circus, we felt like we were standing in a forest. Thank you.